Well, welcome back. We're going to take a look here and prep test 79's section 3. And I want to see if we can cover questions uh, 20, 21, 22. And this is in logical reasoning. The issue posed in question number 20 is the dialogue provides the most support for the claim that Edgar and Raffaella disagree over. Okay, so there's going to be an issue of disagreement. I want to read the arguments textually. I want to see if I can identify it in advance. Okay, and then pick the answer. So Edgar says, some of the pumps supplying water to our region have been ordered shut. Have been ordered shut down in order to protect a species of small fish. Okay, I got that. But it is absurd to inconvenience thousands of people for the sake of something so inconsequential. So before I move on to Raffaella, from Edgar, I'd get the water supply has been shut down to protect the small fish. And he then said, that's absurd. It's just not worth it. What you can't do all this for a small fish. Okay. Raffaella's reply, you're missing the point. Well, if he's missing the point, then there's a disconnect here. So how is he missing the point? Raffaella says, the threat to that fish species is a sign of a very serious threat to our water supply. So Raffaella is saying they're not shutting it down solely to protect the species of the fish. They're shutting it down because the harm being done to the species of the fish is a dangerous sign for us. Got it. And now I'm just looking for the answer choice. A, shutting down the pumps will actually inconvenience a large number of people. No evidence to disagree about that. B, the survival of the fish species is the only reason for shutting down the pumps. B's the answer. I'm out of here. Whack that mole, move on. And this is what IRAC allows you to do. So again, for video, we'll keep going, but I would not keep going on the test. C, do they disagree that species of small fish are inconsequential? I have no clue if that's Raffaella's position. D, the order to shut down the pumps was legal. There is no information about that. And E, shutting down the pumps will be sufficient to protect the fish species. So the answer should be pretty clear if you have read the argument textually, applied the issue to the rule, and done the come up with the conclusion. Okay, 21. 21 is which one of the following is an assumption required by the analogy. So we're introduced to, the first thing comes to my, absolutely, the first thing that comes to my mind is when you move by analogy, the underlying assumption is the analogy you employ is valid. So it's a very unusually worded question. And it makes me wonder if the answer isn't embedded in the form of the question. Okay, let's see what we have here. Only engineering is capable of analyzing the nature of a machine in terms of the successful working of the whole. And I'm going to stop there because it's clearly going to be, the wording is not going to be attractive. They've given me a semicolon. So let me see what I have here. So only engineering, nothing else does this, right? Only engineering is capable of analyzing the nature of a machine in terms of the successful working of the whole. Okay, so it's part to a whole. Engineering is the only thing capable of that. Next sentence, physics and chemistry. So it kind of sounds like they're comparing physics and chemistry to engineering. Physics and chemistry determine the material conditions necessary for the success, but cannot express the notion of purpose. Okay, so we have engineering, physics, chemistry. Physics and chemistry cannot give the sense of purpose that engineering can when you're looking at part of a whole. Okay. Similarly, well, if we're talking about similarly, we can consider that there's an analogy right here because we're using the word similarly. Okay, so only physiology can analyze the nature of an organism in terms of organs' roles in the body's healthy functioning. So that does seem analogous to, engineering is to the successful working of the whole, what physiology is to the successful working of the whole. So for this to be valid, it must be the case that you can successfully compare engineering to physiology. Final sentence. Physics and chemistry cannot ascertain by themselves any of these operational principles. Well, you notice how we've repeated physics and chemistry. So we have physics and chemistry in the first part of this argument, physics and chemistry in the last part of this argument. So that's a constant. The difference is you're going to have to analogize between engineering and physiology. And it's got to be an analogy. So this is certainly going to be a level 5. I certainly do not have the words for this. That said, I'm looking for something that pivots on engineering or a synonym for engineering. It pivots on physiology or a synonym for physiology. And it must mention some way, manner, shape, or form that these two things can be validly compared. And I'm done. And we'll say, A, the functioning of the human organism is machine-like in nature. Well, that's not responding to my analysis because I'm not looking for that. B, physics and chemistry determine the material conditions required for good physiological functionings. Well, it does mention physics and chemistry, but this is not about physics and chemistry. It's really about engineering and physiology. C, the notion of purpose used by engineers to judge the success of machinery has an analog in organisms. And I would keep reading, but yeah, that's going to be the answer. If you notice the word analog, of course, means analogy. So that's in there. And on the one hand, we're talking about the engineers and machinery, and that the analog in organisms has to do with physiology. And its ability to describe, if you will, or come to an understanding of health functioning. So yeah, like that's the answer. We keep reading. D, physiology as a science is largely independent of physics and chemistry. Again, that's not getting to the analogy. And E, biological processes are irreducible to mechanical or chemical processes. And that may or may not be an accurate statement based on what you've read, but it's not an assumption required for the validity of this argument, because this argument is that you can make these conclusions based on this analogy. So the answer to question number 21 is C for Caligula. 22. Which one of the following, if true, most strengthens the argument? Okay, and this is certainly going to be the weedy part of the exam. And you can almost see it coming as I look at, whatever this is. HepaDNA virus, who knows? I'm just going to call it a virus, all right? So I know I want to strengthen the argument. I want to read it textually. I want to understand the argument, then I'll strengthen it. So after a virus inserts itself into a chromosome of an animal, fragments of the virus are passed on to all of that animal's descendants. Okay, I got that. A virus fragment, and I'm just following, it's the same virus. A virus fragment is present in a chromosome of the finch in precisely the same location, and a corresponding chromosome of the junco. Okay, so I don't know what a finch is. I don't know what a junco is. I don't care. But what I found here is I've given two facts, right? The first fact tells me that when the virus does this, when it gets off, it's passed down. Then I'm told, okay, I have a finch and I have a junco, whatever they are, right? And they have the virus in precisely the same spot. Okay. The fact that, so those are two premises. The fact that these two birds diverged from each other about 25 million years ago, therefore means that the virus is at least 25 million years old. So the conclusion, which is the final sentence, right, is the virus that we're looking at is the virus that inserted itself in the chromosome 25 million years ago. And the only piece of evidence is in that really, connecting it is really in that second sentence. So the connection here is in there precisely the same spot. So if you want to say that that is compelling evidence, that the fact that they're in the same spot is compelling evidence, right? That you can now walk this back 25 million years and it's the same virus 25 million years ago, then it would make sense to say at that time, 25 million years ago, that virus could have come in at any spot. It was random. If it was random, right? So that virus was not always coming into the same spot. Then you could look at and say, well, yeah, if 25 million years later, these two guys have it in the same spot, and at that time, this virus could have been in any spot. Well, yes, then that is suggesting that the virus we're looking at is the virus that was 25 million years old. Again, going to be a very high level of difficulty. What do I have here? A, viruses can affect the evolution of an organism and can thereby influence the likelihood of their diverging into two species. Well, that's not really what the conclusion is. The conclusion here is that this virus is 25 million years old. So again, for it to be 25 million years old, it's got to be the same bloody virus, right? Okay. B, chromosomes of the finch and the junco contain fragments of no virus other than this virus. That's not really helping me. That's not telling me that this virus is 25 million years old. C, when a virus inserts itself into an animal's chromosome, the insertion occurs at a random spot. And yes, that's the answer, because if that's true, then 25 million years ago, it was entirely random, right, where that ended up, in what part of the animal that ended up. So now if you're looking 25 million years later, and you're seeing that virus, which could have ended up anywhere in the species body, and you're looking 25 million years later, and you find it in the exact same spot on two species that separated 25 million years ago, that is evidence that that's the same virus because it's in the same spot. D, many bird species other than the finch and the junco contain fragments of the virus. That's not helping me. That's not telling me why this is 25 million years old and it's the same virus. And E, the presence of the virus in an animal species does not affect the likelihood of its survival, is not relevant at all. So the answer is 22 is C for Caligula. And I think both 21 and 22 almost certainly were level 5. So don't go crazy if you got them wrong.